welcome to this edition of Beyond the Ballpark, brought to you by Hurrdat 1. I'm Christina, and this time we're talking storms, heat, lightning delays, and how weather shapes the Men's College World Series, which of course calls for expert insight. So joining me today is Brigit Mahoney, a new contributor for Hurrdat 1, with a wealth of weather knowledge and experience. So thank you for joining me to talk about everyone's favorite topic in the Midwest, which is weather.
You love it, right?
Exactly. It's the thing we have in common. We just can't help ourselves.
It's always the first thing of small talk, I think. The first thing you say.
So you must be very good at small talk.
I don't know, actually.
Not to brag, but I kind of got that nailed. You bring a special insight to those conversations, I'm sure. And especially when we're talking about outdoor events too. But first, I want you to tell us about you. You have an incredible career in meteorology, and you're bringing your talents to Hurrdat 1. But you're also from Omaha and going to be an important contributor to Hurrdat 1 going forward. But first, help us get to know what brings you back to Omaha, most importantly.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Nice welcome there. Originally from here, so I grew up no stranger to severe weather, of course. I think anyone who grows up here knows it is the prime location for severe weather.
Absolutely.
So from here, I went to the University of Missouri, studied atmospheric science, graduated, and then that's where I really got my career in media, and I stayed in Columbia for a couple of years. From there, I went to St. Louis, which also is kind of a pinnacle for severe weather, winter weather, all of it. And then 2 years in St. Louis, then I went to New York City, which was such an awesome experience. I went to Fox Weather, kind of a startup there, so helped get that off the ground, was an on-air meteorologist, where the pro of being in New York is I forecasted for the entire country, which was an entirely new challenge in itself.
Exactly. Well, especially to go from such a hyper-local publication and media outlet to now this national conversation you were getting to have. And that is what you're going to be doing for Hurrdat 1 too, is both looking at locally when we have big weather events happening, but also forecasting throughout the country, because since we're in the middle of the country, people have family all over the world.
And I think what people don't realize about even local forecasts, that local forecast is a part of a national story. So you can forecast for the country, and it kind of leads you down the way of what's going to happen here locally. So it all ties in together. I think that's what we call the butterfly effect. So with the weather, it's applicable as well.
Yeah. So more on all the great things that Brigit's going to do and contribute to Hurrdat 1 later. But first, to get down to brass tacks, we're talking about the thing that everybody seems to be talking about this time of year, which of course is the Men's College World Series. Baseball, and highly affected by weather, being that it's all played outside, of course.
Yeah, very much so. I think anyone who's been to the College World Series has been impacted by the weather, whether it's severe weather, storms. I've been to several games myself where, it's rained out, you get in your seats, 10 minutes later, they're kind of evacuating the field. So, and heat, of course. Everyone knows that problem.
It seems to be one or the other. It does. And so for that reason, this seemed like a really good opportunity to have a bigger conversation on the weather, specifically during around the Men's College World Series, because it does seem to be so extreme one way or another. So and there's science behind it too, to explain what it is that makes June such a unique or tricky time in Omaha.
It is a tricky time. I think no matter what, forecasting for the weather is hard, but it's those transition months of the year that is really hard to nail down the forecast. And I think a lot of people don't realize that June is still one of those transition months of the year. We're not quite yet into the prime time of summer. That's more considered, say, July, August. So it's the transition of the jet stream that really makes the forecast hard to nail down, whether it's heat or severe weather.
That is interesting because, like you said, it does seem like it's either really hot, really sunny. Seems like we get our hottest days of the year during the Men's College World Series, even though, to your point, it is not fully considered to be the summer season. Or, the storms just wreak havoc on baseball fans just trying to enjoy the game.
It's that atmospheric battleground, I would say, for the month of June. So what's happening atmospherically? Typically, we see the jet stream kind of lifting, pushing up to the north. When you think about the winter months, you have that jet stream dipping off to the south. But this time of year, it's actually pushing to the north. But what happens there is heat really starts to build, and then we get what we call these short waves. It's kind of the rippling effect of the energy off of the jet stream.
Wow.
In essence, what a short wave does, it causes lift within our atmosphere. From there, we see the thunderstorms develop. Lift in the atmosphere is kind of that boiling energy that builds up. So that's where we get the thunderstorm activity. And that can be pretty tricky to nail down this time of year.
Yeah, tricky to exactly put a finger on. But what do you find are the typical weather patterns that happen within that mid-June time frame?
I would say, obviously, building heat, building humidity. So like I mentioned, as the jet stream is lifting, what we have there is winds coming in out of the south. So with that, we see building heat, building humidity, and that humidity also aids in some of the thunderstorm development.
Okay.
So heat, one thing, and then two, those kind of unpredictable thunderstorm development that we see with some of those short waves that quickly move through, but it's just quick enough to, it always seems to hit right at the prime time of, say, the 1 o'clock baseball games or the 6 o'clock evening games.
Yeah, those 6 o'clock games, it seems to be especially at the point where the heat is really picking up.
Yeah.
It's in that late of the afternoon getting into evening that the humidity is building, and then the temperature on the field.
It's brutal.
Just seems like it's baking down there. Yeah.
I always feel for the players because I'm just sitting there in my seat.
Enjoying a breeze. Yeah. You hope. Yeah.
Iced lemonade, and they're out on the field, and, I'm complaining. I can't imagine for them.
No kidding. Well, and so there are also, along with the field heat, there are photo wells along on either side of the dugouts where a lot of media and photographers hang out. And I think they also have a special appreciation for just how toasty it gets down there, too. So we always say, drink lots of water and hydrate. But no, that is really, I guess, the special part of the College World Series is that it is so dependent on what the weather is like, kind of how it affects the players. But in the past, there have been notable weather events or delays that have directly contributed to exactly how the entirety of the series went down, right?
For sure. And I think those memories, those weather delays, those sear into the minds of people. It's memorable seasons. Whether it was last year, we saw an event. What game was it? It was Texas A&M versus Florida on June 15th. That was
I remember it well. That. Yes. Yeah.
Did you end up going or?
Yeah. So before coming to Hurrdat, I worked down at the ballpark for the past 6 men's College World Series. And that did, looking back, seems to be one of the worst years that we had for weather delays. And I know that there's a few that you have particularly top of mind, but maybe because that one is so recent to me, it just resonates that, that seemed to be a really rough year for games.
And I think it was amplified so much more because of how long-standing some of those thunderstorms were through the afternoon. I think the delay was 4 hours on that game.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I think it was supposed to be a 6 o'clock game, and the first pitch didn't happen until, I think, 10:15.
Wow.
Which 9th inning ended right around 1:15 in the morning.
I also recall that was a very late night. And again, for people who are just in the stadium, can't imagine being the players as they play that late too, because with the balance of severe weather in the area and all the precautions that need to be in place for that, there is also the ongoing issue of heat and humidity that has you just continuing to bake as you wait for the game to actually be played.
I'm sure a lot of people went to the local bars, maybe inside, hoping that the game would start quicker. But I think 4 hours later, they were probably kind of discouraged. I know I did a little bit of research about that game. The players, they were actually a little bit grateful that it wasn't the olden days back at Rosenblatt, because apparently at Rosenblatt, they would actually have to sit in the dugout and hang out with any weather delays. But actually, Charles Schwab Field, they can go inside and they have a little bit more room. Yeah,
that is fun. And there's such a nostalgia with Rosenblatt, which of course I know and appreciate. But having the modern amenities for players, for weather delays, for safety, certainly is an advantage when things like this pop up, because they pop up every year. But it's funny you say that, because now I'm remembering when that tornado watch popped up, there were still people hanging out outside, tailgating in the beer gardens. And I remember peeking outside thinking, these baseball fans are relentless.
Right.
They do not care that there is a tornado watch. They're not going to let the party stop. So you're exactly correct. I think while the stadium had to clear out, the bars did fill up.
They enjoyed their time.
Such as the
and I think that's a epitome of Nebraska. You can hear sirens outside, and people, unfortunately,
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
may not take that seriously. Of course, as a meteorologist, I'm saying the opposite. If there are sirens,
Correct.
you need to make sure you get inside. Or even if there's a tornado watch, you need to make sure you're keeping track of the radar.
Yeah, have a
I'm
safety
sure
plan.
people were and still having fun, but it's just something to think about this time of year.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. But in your research, too, there's a couple other games you said that were significantly impacted by weather, too, right?
2018 was a crazy season. I know for the meteorologists as well as teams that have to decide the field conditions and whether to cancel or delay, they have said that was the hardest season of pretty much all time because of just the weather scenario that we saw shape up over a week's time.
Yeah, and I also did happen to be working at the ballpark for that series too. And you're exactly right. You're trying to achieve this balance of assuring that you're not wasting people's time.
Right.
You know, people came expecting to see a game. Athletes came expecting to play. But there is this weight of risk, whether you start the game and potentially burn a pitcher, or do you just punt and hope that the weather clears eventually, that you can still play ball that day.
And I think that's the tricky part for the meteorologist on staff. They're saying, hey, we're going to get rain probably in the third inning if we start the game. And then the coaches are saying, well, we don't want to start a game with a pause in the third inning because, you know, that affects the players. But at the same time, say it's start time, what should be first pitch of the game. If it's still sunny outside, I know spectators are saying, why is this game delayed?
Every year,
Why are we waiting around? It's fine, but little do they know, if they look into the nuance of the forecast, in an hour's time, the game would be potentially delayed anyway. So there's a lot of, I think, messaging challenges that comes with it, and a lot of decisions that come with that. I know the coaches really advocate for a game that can be played all the way through without stopping. It doesn't always happen that way.
Right. And that is, you're exactly right. I think there is just, for the casual fan base, maybe not an immediate understanding that those conversations are always going on behind the scenes. And the primary objective of each team is to play their best game. And so if they don't think that can happen, they are also a little bit gun shy to go into a game. So then, of course, you have the on-staff meteorologist that's saying, this is my best guess about what's going to happen. And sometimes that pans out and sometimes it doesn't. So then you have fans with even more confusion. It's just one of those things that is tough to always strike the right balance, but to make sure that every student athlete has the best possible experience, even with the volatility of weather. But getting into the first men's College World Series that happened at Charles Schwab Field, that was, I seem to recall, because I was still in news at the time, that weather played a significant
What year was that?
story in that. That was in 2011, that there was the first year that they played the men's College World Series at Charles Schwab Field.
Right. Was that the year where there was a tornado warning in effect?
That's the one. Yeah. Another one. You know what? Rinse and repeat for every men's College World Series. There is a tornado watch.
Mother Nature really trying to break in the field.
Maybe not a baseball fan, or maybe she is. Tough to say.
I don't know.
Essentially every year since the men's College World Series has moved to Charles Schwab Field, there has been some sort of weather story that has dominated headlines a little bit, even the very first year, which was in 2011, that they played the series at that ballpark. Yeah,
I know there was a game that actually, in the middle of the game, there were sirens going off. Luckily, though, at the time of the game, there actually wasn't a tornado warning in effect. I think that may confuse people thinking, if there's no tornado warning, hey, why are we hearing the sirens? But a lot of people don't understand that the sirens can still go off even if we don't have a tornado warning in effect.
So why would that be, or would the sirens go off?
So the county actually is the one that decides when they alarm the sirens.
Sure.
Many people would think it would be the National Weather Service, but actually Douglas County has a place where the sirens go off, one, of course, if there's a tornado warning in place, or two, if there's a severe thunderstorm warning that the National Weather Service has a destructive tag on it.
I see.
So severe thunderstorm warnings, they put destructive tags on it when they see those winds in excess of 80 miles per hour, or we see baseball size hail or larger. So you can have kind of two levels of severe thunderstorm warnings. So once it gets that destructive tag, that's when Douglas County decides to alarm those sirens as well.
That makes sense. So I believe that's Douglas County Emergency Management. They're talking to local meteorologists, probably watching the weather to understand what's incoming, and then would make a decision based on that too. Okay.
Yeah, they're watching what the National Weather Service does. And I do think other factors go into it, maybe not just strictly what I outlined there. I think, Douglas County is thinking, hey, we have the College World Series go on. So maybe they would be a little bit more quick with the trigger because there's a lot of people outside. So there's a lot of factors that go into those things that people don't realize. But no matter what, if you're hearing the sirens go off, that means you need to get to shelter immediately.
Yeah. In these instances, because of course you're from Omaha and a baseball fan too, do you find yourself ever watching the skies more than you're watching the game, especially if you have an intuition that something is going to happen that day?
Yeah, for sure. I remember it was freshman year, summer. I came to the College World Series actually with some girlfriends. I was studying atmospheric science at the time. So I was really just
fresh in your brain.
Yeah, I was really just starting to get into it. And there was a rain delay. And my friends were kind of poking fun at me because all day long I'm checking the radar. I'm saying, hey, I don't know if we're going to actually be able to fit this game in. We got to the game. Yeah. I think it started maybe first pitch, and then like within the inning or two, they understood why I was checking the radar so much that day.
You're like, well, I hate to be proven right, but here you were showcasing early on that you had a knack for predicting what was going to happen with the weather. That's funny. And part of that too is, we talked about, obviously there are lots of factors or entities that weigh in on the decision making when it comes to whether or not you play ball. But the NCAA also has their own policy in place too that I think a lot of people don't immediately understand too, which affects if and when you play too.
For sure. At the field, they actually have a sensor that can detect lightning within an 8-mile radius. So it scans for 8 miles to see lightning. If they get that detection, then there's a 30-minute period where they have to wait 30 minutes. As long as there's no lightning within that 8 miles, within 30 minutes, that's when they will put the game on again.
Yeah. And there always is confusion about that too, because you don't always see it within 8 miles, especially if it's a sunny day. But every year when we're in a lightning delay, we'll pop up a clock countdown on the scoreboard, and it'll say 30 minutes, and then it starts ticking down after every lightning strike has been detected.
Right.
Sometimes you'll get down to 5 minutes left.
People
and then
are
if there's a hit,
excited.
they're filing back in, they're getting ready, and if there's a hit, it pops back up to 30, and then there's audible groans throughout the stadium too, because they thought they were about to play ball, and it just wasn't going to happen for them, not with the storms in the area.
If you think about it, the visibility within the ballpark, you're not really seeing the entire sky. So you may say, I didn't see a lightning strike, but, back off to the east of you, there may have been one. So.
And is that because lightning just has the ability to travel that far or at that rate? Or is there like a math or a science behind why it is exactly 8 miles is the reason that you would keep players off the field?
I think that, I think it's just a safety thing in terms of, as the thunderstorms move 8 miles, you just wouldn't want that cell or that lightning strike to come over the field, or of course, just the general safety of if it could travel that far, you wouldn't want to, I would say that's a liability for the field.
Yeah. And like we were talking about too, all of that goes into the decision making, coaches, players, but also for the NCAA, who has a vested interest in making sure that every game is safely conducted for student athletes.
I think that's the number one goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So if there is a lightning delay or severe weather in the area, at what point do you encourage visitors, fans to seek safety or shelter? Is it just at the directive of if they're following what local emergency management is saying, or at what point do you think it's important for folks to find cover in those instances?
Yeah, I think, the College World Series, NCAA, they have their social media accounts.
Yep.
So they have, I know, Twitter, I think it's CWS Omaha, they have an Instagram.
Yep.
They're continuously putting out weather updates on that. And like we mentioned earlier, they have a meteorologist on staff who's advising the socials team to kind of put out this messaging. So I would say first and foremost, you do want to follow those accounts, pay attention to what they're saying. If the stadium is saying, hey, take shelter, make sure you're doing so. Other great resources, of course, any of the local media that we see here in Omaha, meteorologists here, us here at Hurrdat 1, we will be continuously updating you, especially during the games, and the National Weather Service. And then, of course, following your intuition. If you see stormy skies off in the distance, just use common sense and make sure you're taking shelter when you need to.
Yeah, really good advice and input too. And because in those instances when you need direct communication, sometimes the event organizers are the one that you could go directly to or lean on for insight about exactly what's going on. So something I want to ask you about too, because we're in the Midwest and we love a weather theory, a weather myth, there are always fan ideas or maybe just hypotheses that have been formed in relation to always baseball, but especially the Men's College World Series.
Right.
And so one of them that people seem to say, and maybe it's just based on seeing it with my own eyes and thinking, well, it's 100 degrees, we're going to have 100 home runs today. Do you find that on hotter days are home runs easier to achieve? And what would be the logic why something like that could even be true?
I think it is tricky. So it is a bit nuanced. If all things were equal, say you cut out the wind, yes, a hotter day does allow the ball to travel farther. But of course, say you have a hotter day with winds at the batter, facing the batter, the ball won't travel as far. So it's a bit nuanced. Once you factor in the wind, it's harder to tell. But yes, say it's 2 days that are not windy, you have a 60-degree day, and then say you have a 100-degree day. I think over time, the 100-degree day would win out with more home runs. And I know studies have actually proven that in the peak summer months, say July and August, maybe even a little bit into September, the MLB shows that there are more home runs hit those months, which is kind of fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah. And that is the theory just being that if the weather conditions are right, like you said, that this could make way for all the physics of baseball to come to fruition in those instances.
And so the science behind it is hotter air is less dense than colder air.
Okay.
So the molecules move more freely. So if you think about the baseball hitter hitting that line drive, and, if the molecules in the air are moving more freely, less dense, it's going to send it right out of the park. So that's the thing. And also humidity. On a humid day, it actually could travel farther as well. That to me always seems counterintuitive because when we think of a hot, muggy day, the air feels thicker.
Yeah.
You would think the ball would travel not as far.
I was going to say, it feels like it would be the opposite. But of course, you're the scientist here, so I have to take your word for it. Because it would seem as if, with thinner feeling air, that would, create less obstruction for a ball traveling through the air, but you're saying it's just the opposite. Yeah,
the more water vapor you put into the air, along with the heat, that's making the air thinner. So kind of interesting there.
Yeah. What do you think is like the most pitcher-friendly weather then?
So cooler weather, I would say. And then pitcher-friendly would be actually winds at the batter. So
of course.
Coming into the batter where it's pushing, the ball's not allowed to travel farther.
Okay. So what could be really good for a batter is not necessarily good for a pitcher too. But of course, if they're opposing teams, that makes sense too. And is there any wind or temperature type of data that you can look at as far as predictability to tell us maybe in advance how a game is going to go?
Yeah, I think, it's hard to tell exactly which team is going to perform better.
Of course.
There's always the nuances of that, the players, their day, kind of how they're preparing. But one thing, if you want to estimate, like, will we see a lot of runs in this game? Or maybe will we see a lot of home runs in this game? Looking at the wind direction and the weather conditions there, I think would be the best scenario setup to see if we're going to see, we could potentially see a lot of home runs. So Charles Schwab Field actually is faced kind of a different direction than many fields across the country.
Interesting.
It's facing southeast. Of course, Omaha did that, so we could see that nice, pretty skyline of downtown. But since it's faced southeast, we see those winds in the summer typically out of the south as the heat builds. That actually prevents, for the most part, it kind of hinders the runs that we could see, home runs.
Interesting.
But if we were to see a big, say, a large home run game, you would probably want to look for those winds coming in out of the northwest, because if you think about it, then the winds are at the batter's back and they're kind of helping that ball fly out of the park.
Wow, yeah. So because it does seem when the home runs are flying, it's pretty consistent per game.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there are none. So it would be perfectly logical that it's based on just what the weather happens to be doing that day too.
Right. And it's not even all about the weather. It's, of course, about the players, but the new balls as well.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I knew that was a factor in it too.
Yeah, since I think 2015, the new balls, that's where it went from, what they call it, it was a dead ball era, was before 2015 in college baseball. Now they've redid the balls. I don't know exactly how, but they're now traveling about 20 to 25 feet farther. So we have seen an uptick in the number of home runs per game, per team. I think before 2015, it was about 0.25 home runs per game per team, but now it's up to half a home run per game per team. That's, of course, when you average it out. You can't actually get half a home run.
Some have more than others. Exactly, yeah.
So really that ball, the change in the ball actually has increased the home runs.
And lots
quite
of
a
factors
bit.
too, yeah. And so, baseball fans love a theory and love to kind of weigh all the different factors that contribute to how a game goes or is played. So we'll look forward to welcoming a former MLB player and current UNO coach to tell us more about that and how it actually impacts the game later in this episode. So we've talked a lot about how, weather impacts student athletes and coaches, teams, but of course there is the fan piece of it too. So what are something that fans should keep in mind if they're going to a game, especially as we move into these severe weather or just really hot times of the year?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would say know the forecast. Make sure you know the conditions you're going to be getting into as you're going out to the game, because the most important thing is to prepare. So if you don't know the forecast, you can't prepare. And then the next step, of course, is to actually prepare for the conditions. Always stay hydrated, whether it's a hot, muggy day or we see those afternoon storms. And make sure you have a radar app on your phone as well. That's super helpful.
That's what I was going to ask you. Other than a radar app that you're very good at interpreting, is there a weather app that you look to or lean on when you're trying to stay ahead of what's going on?
Yeah, I would say always the local stations' weather apps. Or what I really love is Radar Scope. It is a little bit more for meteorologists, but anyone can learn to use it. That's a great app for tracking severe thunderstorm warnings, for tracking the cells as they're coming through.
Yeah. And we were chatting a bit before, too, that something simple that folks can explore if they want to be able to enjoy a game in the heat of the day is just to look for shaded seats, too.
Yeah. That I always forget about that. Like, once you get in your seat, you're like, oh, we probably should have planned this out a little bit better. Yeah. But there are ways to plan it, and you just think about the sun angle and, of course, the game time that you see. So typically, if you want to plan it out, first baseline, that is where we see the shaded seats quicker.
Okay.
Because of how the sun's rising to the east, it eventually works behind the first baseline, and there's that awning that allows for shade. And then after that, home plate will be shaded, and then from there we see the second baseline. That is later in the day, late afternoon, early evening.
Yeah, and those are usually for those evening games too, right? It seems like during the day games, you're going to be in the sun for a little bit, but of course, it's important to note that clear plastic water bottles are permitted at Charles Schwab Field, 20 ounces or less. You can bring those in empty and fill them up at various water filling stations. They also have water monsters on the concourse that are freely available for public use.
Yeah, and if you're in the left field, that's sun all day, basically until the sunset. So make sure you're aware of that, and make sure you're bringing the seat covers.
Yeah.
Because those seats get so hot.
A little toasty. Yeah, you're right.
Especially if you're wearing shorts. So
Which that time of year. Yep.
Something I forget as well.
Yeah, if you're in the sun, sunscreen, anything protective like that makes a big difference. And if you forget your sunscreen, of course, I know that there is some available for visitors at guest services at the ballpark. So they try to have you covered, but you see things like sun protective shirts walk in, hats, personal fans, all these things that can try to help you at least get through the heat of the day when if your team is having a good game and you just can't stand the thought of stepping away or going to find air conditioning too. But of course, ice cream, lemonade, they got all that there too. All the important
I always
weather essentials.
I always say alternate. I know a lot of people, love their beer, vodka drinks. It's fun, but make sure you're mixing in the water as well.
Exactly. Oh yeah, hydration is absolutely key. I'm curious too. Have you ever had to deliver like when you're doing national weather too, have you ever had to deliver like tough weather news, especially knowing that there's big events going on? You're looking at things going around in the country that, people have been, and have they blamed you for it too? Yeah.
I think the highest pressure is always people who write in about their wedding, say, hey, my wedding's in a week. That's like, oh no, I don't want to tell you it's going to be stormy. So that, and then of course, big events is always kind of high pressure because you don't want to get the forecast wrong. Especially if you say it's going to be stormy. And then I guess if it is sunny, people hopefully will forget about it. But if you say it's going to be sunny and then it storms, not great. So it's high pressure, but, luckily I feel like in today's technology and, the advancements in meteorology, it does make it a little bit easier to predict that accurate forecast.
Yeah. So in summary, Brigit, what's kind of the big weather takeaway that you want people to keep in mind as we head into the Men's College World Series? And of course, just the general unpredictability that we see every June.
Yeah, I would say almost that's the takeaway right there. Okay. June is unpredictable, but you just stay on top of the forecast, tune into your local meteorologist, and then you'll be covered. You'll really be in the know about what's going on. But when you're coming to Omaha, traveling to Omaha for the College World Series, I would say be prepared for anything. We got the heat, we got the storms. I think people would enjoy a cooler day or two. Maybe we'll mix in a couple of those, but just be prepared for the rain, the storms, and the heat.
Yeah, that's all great advice. So thank you, Brigit, for breaking down the science behind the storms and the sun, especially as we find ourselves in severe weather season. If people want to follow you for more insight or advice, of course, you're going to be a regular contributor for Hurrdat 1 as we venture into this really important weather arena where people, it is vitally important that they stay informed.
Yeah, Hurrdat 1 and, of course, Hurrdat Weather, and then also my personal pages at Brigit Mahoney.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Brigit. And catch other episodes and content from Beyond the Ballpark for more Men's College World Series tips and tricks. And like Brigit said, follow us on Hurrdat 1 for the latest from our local storytellers.